It all started on a seemingly normal Tuesday afternoon when I received a letter from my homeowners association, or HOA. As I opened the envelope, I was filled with anticipation. My dream of having a beautiful pool in my backyard was finally within reach. I imagined lazy summer days spent lounging by the water, hosting barbecues with friends, and creating lasting memories with my family. But as I read the letter, my heart sank. The HOA had denied my request to build a pool, citing vague regulations and aesthetic concerns that felt completely arbitrary. I couldn't believe it. My backyard was expansive and perfect for a pool, and I had researched everything meticulously, from design and landscaping to safety features. The thought of spending another summer without a pool was unbearable. Not only did this decision feel unfair, but it also felt like an infringement on my rights as a homeowner. After all, I worked hard to afford this house, and all I wanted was a small piece of paradise in my own backyard. The denial sparked anger and frustration within me. The letter was filled with bureaucratic jargon that made it clear the HOA didn't care about individual homeowners' desires. Instead, they seemed more focused on maintaining some arbitrary standard of conformity that no one in the neighborhood had signed up for when they moved in. I wasn't alone in feeling this way. Many of my neighbors had voiced similar frustrations about the HOA's overreach in recent months. But this time it felt personal. As the days passed since receiving that fateful letter, I found myself dwelling on the situation more and more. I couldn't shake the image of my backyard transformed into a vibrant oasis filled with laughter and splashes of water. Instead, I was faced with an empty space where dreams of summer fun were stifled by rules that seemed designed to suppress individuality. That's when a wild idea struck me. What if I didn't just build a pool? What if I created something completely unconventional that would not only satisfy my desire for a water feature, but would also send a message to the HOA about their unreasonable restrictions? That's when I settled on the idea of building a moat around my yard. But not just any moat, a moat filled with alligators. At first glance, the idea seemed outrageous, maybe even insane. But as I began to brainstorm the logistics of constructing such an eccentric addition to my property, I realized it might just be the perfect solution. A moat would serve as a unique water feature while also creating an impenetrable barrier around my yard, one that no HOA could possibly object to. I dove headfirst into research about moats and alligator care. Surprisingly, there wasn't much information readily available about keeping alligators as pets. Most people kept them in sanctuaries or zoos. However, there were recreational facilities where people could interact with them safely under controlled conditions. This gave me hope that raising them responsibly could be feasible. Next came the challenge of actually building the moat itself. It required planning out its dimensions, digging deep enough to accommodate alligators while ensuring it didn't become a safety hazard for anyone else in the neighborhood. As word spread about my plans among neighbors, reactions varied from disbelief to outright excitement. Some neighbors thought it was hilarious, others were less amused. Even though there were doubters, there were also those who rallied behind me, friends who offered to help dig and construct the moat while sharing in the absurdity of the situation. The project quickly became a community affair. Everyone wanted to see how this bizarre notion would unfold. As we began digging out the foundation for what would soon become my moat, I couldn't help but feel exhilarated at taking matters into my own hands. It felt empowering to stand up against what I believed was an unjust ruling from the HOA. In many ways, this venture symbolized not just my desire for fun in my backyard, but also an act of defiance against any entity that sought to stifle creativity and individuality. The process wasn't without its challenges, though. Dealing with permits and regulations wasn't easy either. Navigating through local ordinance regarding exotic animals proved quite daunting, especially since not many people in our town had gone down this road before me. But amidst all these trials stood an unwavering belief. This wouldn't just be about having a moat or even curating an unusual home feature. It would be about asserting ownership over my property in a way that demanded attention from both neighbors and those rigid HOA board members who thought they could dictate how we lived our lives. And so began my journey toward transforming not just my backyard, but how we viewed our rights as homeowners within this community. A journey full of twists, turns, laughter, and perhaps a few moments of sheer terror once those alligators arrived. Once the shock of the HOA's decision settled, I found myself daydreaming about what could replace my dream pool. The idea of a moat began as a whimsical thought, a way to channel my frustration creatively. But as I mulled it over, it quickly evolved from a mere joke into a full-fledged plan that excited me more than I ever anticipated. The concept of building a moat around my yard was unconventional, yes, but it also felt like the perfect middle finger to an organization that had taken away something I truly wanted. I pictured it, a wide flowing moat filled with shimmering water, surrounded by lush greenery, and perhaps even some decorative stonework. But more importantly, it would be home to alligators, real alligators. The thought of these majestic creatures gliding through the water sparked an adrenaline rush in me, transforming my initial resentment into something almost exhilarating. Of course, I knew I had to do this right. Constructing a moat required careful planning and consideration, not just for aesthetics, but also for safety and legality. First things first, I needed to research how to build a proper moat. I envisioned something that could rival the castles of old, complete with sturdy walls and enough depth to keep my new reptilian friends happy and healthy. As I dove into my research, I discovered that moats had historically served both defensive and decorative purposes. They were designed to protect property while adding an element of grandeur. If they worked for medieval castles, why couldn't they work for my suburban home? I became enamored with the idea of turning my backyard into a fortress, my own personal sanctuary that would not only defy the HOA's restrictions, but also capture the imaginations of everyone who saw it. The next step was figuring out the logistics of incorporating alligators. Keeping them was no small feat. I soon learned that they required specific habitats and care. These reptiles need ample space to swim and bask in the sun, as well as secure areas where they can retreat when feeling stressed or threatened. After researching local laws regarding ownership of exotic animals, I discovered that in my state, keeping alligators was legal under certain conditions, if you had the proper permits and ensure their welfare. With excitement bubbling within me, I reached out to local wildlife experts to gather information on acquiring alligators responsibly. Many experts emphasize the importance of understanding their needs and behaviors. Alligators are fascinating creatures but can also be unpredictable. They require respect and careful handling. This realization only fueled my determination to create an environment where they could thrive while being entertaining enough for my neighbors. I began sketching out plans for the moat itself. It would need to be deep enough for swimming, yet shallow enough for easy maintenance. The design included sloping banks lined with native plants to provide shade and natural cover for the alligators. As I drew up blueprints on paper, each line represented not just a physical structure, but a new chapter in my quest for freedom from HOA constraints. While drafting plans, I decided it would be wise to involve my neighbors in this process, not necessarily because I needed their approval, but because this bizarre undertaking could turn into something fun for everyone involved. After all, who wouldn't want to witness an eccentric moat being constructed right next door? So, armed with colorful sketches and an infectious enthusiasm, I invited neighbors over for a casual meeting. To my surprise, many were intrigued by the idea. What started as skeptical glances soon transformed into laughter and excitement as I recounted my vision for this unusual backyard feature. Some even offered help. Friends volunteered their weekends to help dig trenches and shape the land into a moat-like structure. It became clear that this project was not just going to be mine. It was evolving into a community endeavor. Even those who initially scoffed at the notion warmed up to it over time. They began imagining summer barbecues by the water's edge and family gatherings where kids could marvel at the alligators swimming gracefully beneath the surface. It dawned on me that this project had the potential not only to defy HOA regulations, but also to bring our community closer together. Of course, there were still practical considerations looming over us like an ominous cloud. Permits had to be obtained for both construction and animal care. Navigating these bureaucratic waters felt daunting at times. However, Every step forward made me more determined than ever to see this project through. As construction began, excitement filled the air every time we gathered in my backyard with shovels in hand. With each scoop of dirt removed from the ground came not only progress toward creating the moat, but also laughter shared among neighbors bonding over our shared absurdity. The more we dug, the more we realized this was about more than just constructing a water feature. It was about reclaiming our right to express ourselves within our own homes. The decision to build a moat full of alligators was no longer simply an act of rebellion against an unyielding HOA. It became a symbol of creativity unbound by rules, a testament that sometimes you have to think outside the box, or in this case, outside conventional swimming pools, to truly make your mark on your world. With a decision made to build a moat filled with alligators, the next step was to dive deep into researching alligator care. I quickly realized that bringing these magnificent reptiles into my backyard required much more than just a desire for something exotic. It meant understanding their needs, behaviors, and the specific requirements for keeping them in a way that ensured both their health and the safety of my family and neighbors. The first thing I discovered was that alligators are not your typical pets. They are wild animals with instincts and behaviors that can be unpredictable. As much as I was excited about the idea of having them in my moat, I knew I had to approach this venture with a sense of responsibility. To get started, I reached out to local wildlife experts and organizations specializing in reptile care. Their insights were invaluable, shedding light on what it truly meant to be an alligator owner. One of the most crucial aspects of alligator care is their habitat. Alligators thrive in environments that mimic their natural habitats, meaning they need access to water for swimming, basking spots for sunning themselves, and shaded areas for retreating when needed. After assessing my moat design, I realized that I had to ensure it was deep enough to allow them to swim comfortably, while also including shallower areas where they could bask on rocks or logs. This not only would make them happy, but also create an engaging environment for everyone who came to see them. Feeding was another significant consideration. Alligators are carnivorous and require a varied diet primarily consisting of meat, fish, chicken, and even specially formulated alligator pellets would be on the menu. As I researched this aspect, I learned that they eat less frequently than you might expect. Adults can go days or even weeks without food depending on their activity level and environmental conditions. This made me realize how important it was to not only provide them with proper nutrition, but also monitor their health closely. I also learned about the behavioral aspects of alligators. They are social creatures within their species, but can become territorial, especially if they feel threatened. This meant that while having multiple alligators could be entertaining and beneficial for their well-being, I would need to carefully manage their interactions. Experts advised me on how to introduce new alligators gradually and monitor their behavior closely during this process. To properly care for alligators, I would need to create an enriching environment that stimulated their natural instincts. This included providing hiding spots, such as submerged logs or plants along the edges of the moat where they could feel secure. Additionally, ensuring clean water was vital. Murky water could lead to health issues for the alligators and deter visitors from wanting to come see them. As I gathered information from various sources, books, online forums dedicated to reptile care, and even videos of experienced keepers, I became increasingly fascinated by these creatures. Each piece of information painted a clearer picture of what it meant to care for alligators responsibly and what unique challenges lay ahead. One particularly eye-opening conversation occurred when I spoke with a local reptile sanctuary owner who had years of experience working with alligators. He emphasized the importance of understanding their body language and vocalizations, how subtle changes in posture could indicate stress or discomfort. This knowledge would be critical not only for ensuring the well-being of my future residents, but also for fostering a safe environment for anyone visiting my home. Another essential aspect was legal compliance. Every state has its own regulations regarding exotic animal ownership. It became evident that I needed to apply for permits not only for housing the alligators, but also for ensuring they were kept in humane conditions. The thought of navigating through red tape felt daunting at first, but knowing how much joy these creatures could bring, along with the thrill of defying HOA restrictions, kept me motivated. With each passing day, As construction on the moat progressed alongside my research efforts, excitement bubbled within me like never before. The idea that soon there would be a lively habitat right outside my back door filled me with anticipation. However, it also came with immense responsibility, a realization that weighed heavily on my shoulders. I began laying out plans for regular checkups with a veterinarian specializing in reptiles once we welcomed our new friends into their home. These appointments would help ensure that any potential health issues were caught early on and addressed promptly, a necessity when dealing with such unique animals. As everything fell into place, a combination of research, planning, and community involvement, I felt increasingly ready for this adventure ahead. The idea of building a moat full of alligators transformed from a rebellious act against an unyielding HOA into an exhilarating journey toward becoming a responsible keeper of these remarkable creatures. Throughout this process, one thing became abundantly clear. Owning alligators wasn't merely about having an exotic attraction in my backyard. It was about embracing an opportunity to learn and grow alongside these magnificent reptiles while bringing joy and just a hint of fear to my neighbors' lives. The stage was set for something truly extraordinary as my vision began taking shape. The moat wouldn't just be a physical barrier, but rather a symbol of individuality and creativity breaking free from conventional constraints. The day had finally arrived to break ground on my moat project, and excitement coursed through my veins like electricity. Armed with shovels, buckets, and a vision, I gathered my friends and neighbors for what I hoped would be the start of something truly extraordinary. Together, we stood at the edge of my yard, looking out over the empty space that would soon be transformed into an alligator paradise. As we began the initial excavation, laughter filled the air. Everyone was eager to dive into this unusual project, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie building among us. The first few shovelfuls of dirt were exhilarating. It felt like we were embarking on a grand adventure together. With each scoop, we were not just digging dirt, we were carving out a piece of history in our neighborhood. The construction process had been meticulously planned. I had drawn blueprints detailing the dimensions of the moat, an oval shape that would allow for both swimming and basking areas for the alligators. We aimed for a depth of about 4 feet in certain sections, with shallower areas designed for sunbathing. As we dug deeper into the ground, I could almost visualize the water glistening under the sun, surrounded by lush greenery. However, it wasn't long before our excitement was met with challenges. The soil proved to be more compact than anticipated, and we quickly learned that some spots were tougher to dig than others. But rather than dampen our spirits, these obstacles only fueled our determination. We exchanged playful banter about how much easier it would have been to build an ordinary pool instead, but that thought was swiftly dismissed. The moat was our calling. As we toiled under the sun, neighbors stopped by to check on our progress. Some brought snacks and drinks, while others offered encouragement or joined the digging. It was heartwarming to see how this peculiar project had captured everyone's imagination. The idea of having alligators right next door sparked curiosity and amusement. People were excited about witnessing something completely unprecedented in our suburban neighborhood. One neighbor even joked that we should charge admission for those wanting to see the moat once it was complete. It made me consider how this venture could turn into a community attraction rather than just a personal statement against the HOA. As I stood there sweating alongside my friends, I realized that what started as an act of defiance was blossoming into something far greater than I could have imagined. After several hours of digging and shaping the moat's outline, we took a break to survey our work. The space was beginning to take form, a massive trench that would eventually hold water and house alligators. It felt surreal standing there amidst a pile of dirt with my friends laughing about how ridiculous yet rewarding this endeavor truly was. With our initial excavation done, it was time to focus on what came next, reinforcing the walls of the moat to prevent erosion and ensure it could hold water without collapsing in on itself. To do this effectively required some creative thinking as well as materials that wouldn't break the bank. I consulted with a local landscaping expert who suggested using large stones and boulders along the edges for stability while also creating an attractive appearance. Inspired by his advice, I rallied my friends again to help me source materials from nearby quarries and landscaping suppliers. The thought of hauling heavy stones seemed daunting at first, but turned out to be another opportunity for bonding. Lifting those boulders became a test of strength and laughter as we made our way back and forth between locations. Once we secured enough stones for reinforcement, we carefully placed them along the perimeter of the moat while ensuring they fit snugly together. This process transformed our simple trench into a formidable structure that resembled something out of a fairy tale, a whimsical castle surrounded by natural boulders. As days turned into weeks, construction continued steadily. We added small islands within the moat where alligators could rest away from prying eyes, a perfect spot for basking under the sun or retreating when needed. Each addition made me giddier with anticipation as I imagined how this unique habitat would soon come alive. Of course, it wasn't all sunshine and laughter. Setbacks occurred along the way, too. One day during construction, an unexpected rainstorm hit while we were working. What began as gentle sprinkles quickly turned into torrential downpours. We scrambled to cover our work, but ended up muddy and soaked instead. Yet even in those wet moments filled with frustration, laughter echoed through the chaos as we tried not to slip in puddles or lose track of tools floating away. It became one of those moments you laugh about later, a reminder that sometimes things don't go according to plan but can still lead to unforgettable memories. Finally came the moment when construction neared completion. The walls stood tall, reinforced with stones that glistened under sunlight like jewels framing nature's artwork. It felt surreal standing there gazing at what had once been just an empty plot of land, now transformed into an intricate moat waiting for its new inhabitants. With everything in place, recessed banks for swimming areas and islands for basking, the next step loomed large, bringing home my alligators. Excitement bubbled within me. Soon enough, my backyard would no longer just be mine. It would become a sanctuary full of life and adventure. Looking around at what we had built together, my friend who'd rallied behind this absurd yet thrilling venture, I felt grateful for their support throughout every challenge faced during construction. The moat wasn't merely a project. It symbolized community spirit rising up against conformity imposed by rules. It taught me that sometimes breaking boundaries leads not only to personal satisfaction but bonds formed through shared experiences. As I envisioned alligators splashing in their new home amidst laughter echoing from neighbors nearby, enjoying this spectacle unfolding before them, a sense of pride washed over me knowing I dared to dream big despite limitations imposed by others. The day had finally arrived. The alligators were coming home. After weeks of construction and preparation, I could hardly contain my excitement. Earlier that week, I had secured the necessary permits and connected with a reputable exotic animal dealer who specialized in alligator care. They had assured me that they would provide healthy, well-cared-for juvenile alligators that would be perfect for my moat. But now, as I stood by the edge of my newly constructed habitat, a mixture of anticipation and nervousness filled the air. On the morning of their arrival, I woke up early, my heart racing with thoughts of what was to come. I had spent countless hours reading about their behaviors and needs, but nothing could quite prepare me for the reality of having actual alligators in my backyard. Would they adapt well to their new environment? How would my neighbors react? As these questions danced through my mind, I knew one thing for sure. This was going to be an unforgettable day. When the transport truck finally pulled into my driveway, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning. The driver stepped out with a smile, lifting the tailgate to reveal several large containers filled with the alligators. They were small, about 3 feet long, but even at that size, they exuded an air of wildness that sent shivers of excitement down my spine. I gathered my friends and neighbors who had helped with the construction. They were just as eager as I was to witness this moment. As the driver carefully unloaded each container, he explained how to handle the alligators safely during their introduction to the moat. "Remember," he said, "these are wild animals. Give them space and let them acclimate on their own terms." His words reminded me of the responsibility I now bore as their caretaker. With each alligator released into the moat, a wave of exhilaration washed over us. The first one splashed into the water, gliding effortlessly beneath the surface before re-emerging with its mouth wide open, a display that both thrilled and terrified everyone watching. The second one followed suit, seemingly more curious than afraid as it explored its new surroundings. Cheers erupted from my friends and neighbors as they witnessed this extraordinary scene unfolding before them. It was surreal. The very idea of having alligators in our suburban neighborhood was something straight out of a movie or a tall tale told around a campfire. Yet here we were living it. I watched closely as each alligator began to acclimate to its new home. They swam in circles, testing out the depths while finding cozy spots beneath rocks and logs I had placed strategically around the moat for their comfort. It was fascinating to see their natural instincts kick in. They seemed curious yet cautious as they investigated their surroundings. As the sun shone overhead, casting sparkles on the water's surface, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about defying HOA rules anymore. It was about creating a vibrant ecosystem right in my backyard and fostering a unique relationship between these reptiles and our community. However, amidst the excitement lay an undercurrent of concern regarding how my neighbors would react now that the alligators were officially here. While many had been supportive throughout construction, there were still those who viewed this project skeptically or even disapprovingly. Would they feel safe knowing there were live alligators just beyond my fence? To address this concern head-on, I decided to host an open house event that weekend, an invitation for everyone in the neighborhood to come see the moat and meet its new inhabitants. My hope was that witnessing these creatures up close might alleviate fears and turn skepticism into fascination. As word spread about the event, anticipation grew among both supporters and skeptics alike. People began sharing stories about their own experiences with reptiles or expressing curiosity about how we would manage life with alligators in our midst. The community buzzed with excitement. It seemed that even those who initially doubted were intrigued enough to check it out. On open house day, families arrived with picnic blankets and snacks ready for an afternoon of fun by the moat. Children squealed with delight upon seeing the alligators swim gracefully through the water, while adults gathered in small groups discussing everything from safety measures to potential names for each reptile. In an effort to ease any lingering apprehensions, I invited a local wildlife expert to speak during the event. He explained how juvenile alligators posed minimal risk if handled properly and emphasized their role in maintaining ecosystems. Educating attendees about their fascinating biology only heightened interest among folks who may have been wary at first. As laughter echoed around us while people snapped photos next to makeshift signs proclaiming, "Welcome home," it became evident that this bizarre venture was knitting our community closer together rather than driving us apart. Neighbors who once exchanged awkward glances now bonded over shared excitement surrounding these magnificent creatures. By evening's end, smiles adorned every face as families packed up to head home after a delightful day filled with awe-inspiring memories made alongside these extraordinary reptiles. Watching them glide through their new habitat under fading sunlight brought me immense joy. It felt rewarding knowing that what started as defiance against an HOA ban had blossomed into something truly special, a unique experience for everyone involved. As darkness fell over our neighborhood, homes lit up one by one, but ours remained aglow from newfound excitement sparked by life within our moat full of alligators. This wasn't just about having unusual pets. It was fostering connections born from creativity and courage amid societal norms, a reminder that sometimes embracing risks leads not only toward personal fulfillment but also toward building community spirit. As the alligators settled into their new home, the reactions from the community and the HOA began to unfold, creating a whirlwind of responses that I had not fully anticipated. In the days following the open house event, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from neighbors, some filled with excitement, others tinged with apprehension. It was clear that the arrival of alligators in our suburban neighborhood was a topic of fervent discussion. Most of my immediate neighbors were thrilled by the spectacle. Families who had attended the open house came back with their children, eager to catch another glimpse of the alligators. They brought along friends and even extended family members who were curious about what had become an unofficial attraction in our community. It felt surreal to have people gathering around my yard, laughing and sharing stories while pointing at these magnificent reptiles swimming gracefully in their moat. However, not everyone shared this enthusiasm. A small group of residents, primarily those who had been vocal supporters of the HOA's decision to ban my pool, expressed their concerns more vocally than ever. Whispers turned into discussions at community gatherings, and I soon learned that some residents felt uneasy about having live alligators just a stone's throw away. The tension between those who embraced this unusual project and those who viewed it as a dangerous affront to neighborhood safety created an undercurrent of division. Among those most vocal in their disapproval was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman known for her staunch support of HOA regulations and her deep-seated belief in maintaining property values above all else. She lived directly across the street from me and had been among the first to complain when I initially proposed building a pool. Now she was on a mission to rally other concerned residents against what she termed an irresponsible decision to introduce alligators into our community. Mrs. Thompson organized an impromptu meeting with several HOA board members, encouraging them to take action against my moat and its inhabitants. I received word that they planned to address this issue at the next HOA meeting, where they would discuss potential measures to enforce property regulations or impose fines. This news sent a ripple of anxiety through me. I had fought hard for this project and didn't want to see it jeopardized by unfounded fears or miscommunication. In response to mounting concerns from both sides, I decided it was time for transparency. I reached out to the HOA board and requested an opportunity to present my case at their upcoming meeting. It was essential for me not only to defend my decision, but also to foster understanding about alligator care and how I plan to ensure safety for everyone involved. On the day of the HOA meeting, I arrived early and set up informational materials, brochures about alligator behavior, care guidelines from wildlife experts, and even testimonials from neighbors who supported my project. As residents filed in, I could feel a mixture of curiosity and skepticism directed toward me. When my turn finally came, I stood before a room filled with board members and concerned neighbors alike. Taking a deep breath, I began by expressing gratitude for their time, acknowledging their worries about safety. Then I shared stories about my journey, the research I had done on alligator care, the precautions taken during construction, and how I plan to keep both my family and neighbors safe. I explained that juvenile alligators posed minimal risk if treated responsibly. They were more likely to avoid human interaction than seek it out. This wasn't just an eccentric decision. It was rooted in education and awareness. I emphasized my commitment not only to their well-being, but also to maintaining open communication with neighbors regarding any developments or concerns. To further alleviate fears, I invited everyone present to visit my home again, this time specifically for an educational session where they could learn more about these creatures firsthand. My hope was that by witnessing how well acclimated the alligators were in their environment, and perhaps seeing them being fed, they would gain confidence in how this unique addition could coexist within our neighborhood. As I concluded my presentation, the atmosphere felt mixed. Some attendees nodded in agreement while others remained skeptical. But engaging openly had opened a dialogue that hadn't existed before. Even Mrs. Thompson seemed less combative after hearing me speak passionately about my intentions. In the days that followed the meeting, something remarkable began happening. As more people visited my home to see the alligators up close, many skeptics transformed into supporters. Neighbors who once feared for their safety now marveled at how fascinating each reptile truly was. The way they swam effortlessly through crystal-clear water or basked lazily under the sun sparked intrigue rather than fear. The community began hosting events centered around education and fun. Gator Days became popular family outings where kids learned about reptiles while enjoying games and activities nearby. What started as tension slowly morphed into collaboration as we formed committees aimed at fostering responsible ownership of exotic pets within our neighborhood. However, despite this newfound camaraderie brewing among many residents, there remained friction with some HOA board members who still sought stricter regulations regarding wildlife ownership. They argue that allowing alligators, even in controlled environments, could set precedents leading down slippery slopes towards chaos. Yet instead of retaliating defensively against their opposition or shutting down communication altogether, I kept reaching out proactively. Regular updates regarding habitat conditions help reinforce trust while dispelling myths surrounding dangers posed by these creatures living so closely among us. As weeks passed since the initial introduction of my alligators into our community, it became evident that embracing creativity amidst adversity had fostered dialogue through shared experiences. With every passing day came fresh opportunities for connection forged through laughter surrounding these extraordinary creatures whose presence transformed what once felt like isolation into vibrant engagement. With the arrival of the alligators and the initial community reaction settling into a new normal, a fascinating transformation began to unfold within our neighborhood. What had started as a rebellious act against the HOA's decision to ban my pool evolved into a unique catalyst for change, bringing residents together in ways I could never have imagined. The moat, once viewed as a controversial addition, became a symbol of creativity and community spirit. As word spread about the alligators and their habitat, more families began to gather around my yard. Spontaneous visits turned into organized events. Children brought their friends to share in the excitement of seeing these amazing reptiles up close. Parents who were once skeptical found themselves captivated by the charm of my alligator moat, often standing alongside their kids to watch the alligators swim or bask in the sun. It was heartwarming to see families bonding over this unusual attraction, sharing laughter and stories while enjoying picnics by the water's edge. The Gator Days event quickly became an anticipated monthly occurrence. Each session was filled with educational activities led by local wildlife experts who volunteered their time to teach both kids and adults about alligator behavior, ecology, and conservation. These gatherings transformed what could have been mere curiosity into a deeper appreciation for these creatures and their role in nature. Neighbors who had once expressed doubt now enthusiastically participated, asking questions and learning together. As relationships formed around the moat, barriers that had once separated neighbors began to dissolve. People who had exchanged polite nods at best were now engaging in meaningful conversations, sharing ideas, and even brainstorming ways to improve our neighborhood. The moat had unwittingly created a common ground where differences could be set aside in favor of community enrichment. I noticed groups forming around shared interests. Families who bonded over gardening began collaborating on beautifying not only my yard but others nearby too. Suddenly, it wasn't just about me and my alligators. It became about collectively enhancing our environment. Flower beds sprouted along fences, while vegetable gardens popped up in backyards as neighbors sought ways to connect with nature and each other. Even Mrs. Thompson, my staunchest critic, gradually softened her stance. After attending several Gator Days and witnessing how engaged her grandchildren were with the reptiles, she realized that her fears were unfounded. She began volunteering to help organize events and even suggested incorporating educational programs about local wildlife that would benefit everyone in our community. It was remarkable to see someone who once stood firmly against this project now fully embracing it. This shift went beyond mere social interactions. It sparked discussions about broader community issues. Residents began meeting regularly to address concerns about maintaining property values and advocating for shared interests that benefited us all. Everything from enhancing safety measures within our neighborhood to planning seasonal events that celebrated our diversity. As we worked together toward common goals, I observed an emerging sense of ownership among residents regarding their community. People felt empowered to voice their opinions, propose initiatives, and collaborate on projects that would enhance our quality of life. The moat had become not just a home for alligators, but also a foundation for fostering civic engagement. One evening, during a particularly lively Gator Day event, someone proposed an idea that took everyone by surprise. What if we started a neighborhood association that focused on celebrating local wildlife while ensuring we adhered to safety regulations? The proposal ignited passionate discussions filled with enthusiasm and creativity. Everyone contributed ideas on how we could structure this new entity while maintaining respect for each resident's property rights. As plans came together over weeks spent brainstorming and refining our vision for this association, I felt immense pride knowing how far we'd come since those tense HOA meetings filled with skepticism. The transformation was palpable. What was once seen as an eyesore had become a source of pride for many in our neighborhood. With this new association taking shape came the opportunity for us to advocate collectively, not just for our interests regarding exotic pets, but also for preserving green spaces and supporting local businesses. This newfound unity opened doors previously thought closed. Connections forged through laughter around my alligator moat blossomed into something much larger than I could have imagined. Reflecting on how this journey began, the initial frustration toward an unyielding HOA, it was evident that sometimes adversity can lead to unexpected positive outcomes when approached with creativity and collaboration. What started as an individual rebellion transformed into a movement fueled by community spirit, a reminder that embracing differences can foster connection rather than division. As summer days turned into autumn evenings filled with laughter echoing through our neighborhood, I marveled at how the presence of alligators had catalyzed such profound change. The moat stood proudly at the center of our community, a testament not only to my determination but also to the collective strength we discovered within ourselves by daring to think outside conventional boundaries. With every splash from those magnificent reptiles serving as inspiration for building bridges among neighbors rather than walls, we forged a new identity rooted in collaboration. Through shared experiences surrounding these creatures once feared, we found joy amidst challenges, transforming them into opportunities for growth. As the excitement surrounding the alligators grew and our community thrived, I couldn't shake the feeling that the HO wasn't quite done with me yet. Despite the positive changes and increased engagement within our neighborhood, I knew they were still keeping a watchful eye on my moat and its inhabitants. It was only a matter of time before their concerns resurfaced, and when they did, the situation escalated quickly. It all began with a formal letter from the HOA board, which arrived one bright morning while I was sipping coffee on my porch. The letter was thick, filled with legal jargon that made my stomach churn. They claimed that my moat violated several community regulations regarding property use, safety standards, and zoning laws. This wasn't just an attempt to ban my pool anymore. They were now trying to dismantle my entire project based on the premise that it posed a potential risk to residents. Reading through the letter, I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. The HOA had initially denied my pool, but didn't anticipate that I'd create something as unconventional as a moat filled with alligators. Now they were back at it, armed with rules and regulations meant to stifle creativity and expression within our community. But I wasn't about to let fear dictate my actions or allow them to bully me out of something that had brought so much joy and unity to my neighborhood. Determined not to back down, I decided it was time to seek legal counsel. After researching local attorneys who specialized in property law and HOA disputes, I found someone who was not only knowledgeable, but also passionate about animal rights and community engagement. We met to discuss my situation, going over the HOA's claims meticulously. My lawyer assured me that we could fight this challenge together. As we prepared for what lay ahead, I gathered support from neighbors who had become invested in the alligator project. Many expressed their willingness to stand by me during this tumultuous time, sharing testimonials about how the moat had changed our community for the better. We organized a meeting where residents could voice their experiences and concerns about the HOA's claims. This would serve as evidence that my project wasn't just an isolated whim, but rather a collective endeavor that had enriched our neighborhood. The day of the hearing arrived, and tension hung thick in the air as residents filed into the community center where it was being held. My attorney and I sat at one table, while members of the HOA board sat across from us, looking stern and resolute in their pursuit of enforcement. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Everyone knew this was more than just about a moat. It was about standing up for our rights as homeowners. When it was my turn to speak, I approached the podium with a mixture of nerves and determination. I recounted my journey, how the initial denial of my pool led me to build something unique that not only fulfilled my dream but brought our community together in unexpected ways. As I spoke passionately about Gator Days and how neighbors had formed connections through shared experiences surrounding these reptiles, I could see nods of agreement from those seated in the audience. Several neighbors stepped up afterward to share their own stories. How children who once played alone now enjoyed playdates by the moat, or how families had bonded over shared interests sparked by this unusual addition. Each testimony reinforced our collective stance against what felt like unjust interference from the HOA. Despite our heartfelt pleas, it became evident that some members of the board remained unmoved. They cited safety concerns regarding having live alligators so close to homes, fears that seemed unfounded given how well we managed their care and habitat. The tension mounted as arguments continued back and forth between my attorney and the HOA representatives. After hours of discussions filled with frustration, we finally reached an impasse. While some board members were willing to compromise on certain regulations regarding exotic pet ownership, others insisted on stricter oversight over future developments in our neighborhood, including threats of fines or even legal action if any further irregularities occurred. While it felt like a partial victory that some board members recognized our efforts and acknowledged how we were fostering community spirit, it also left lingering anxiety regarding those who still clung firmly to outdated norms, people who viewed anything outside their established vision as a threat. Afterward, I gathered with friends outside as we processed everything that had unfolded during the hearing, exhausted yet hopeful. It became clear that this battle wasn't just mine. It belonged to everyone who believed in embracing individuality within our community instead of conforming blindly to rigid rules imposed by others. In the days following those tense hearings, conversations continued among residents about what steps we could take next, not only regarding alligators, but also toward shaping an inclusive environment where creativity thrived without fear of retaliation from authority figures like HOAs. We began discussing forming committees focused on reviewing existing regulations while advocating for more progressive policies surrounding property use, and perhaps even establishing guidelines for responsible exotic pet ownership throughout our neighborhood. In many ways, this experience reinforced what I'd learned throughout this journey. Standing up against adversity is never easy, but with support from friends and neighbors willing to rally behind you, we could reshape perceptions while fostering understanding. Though legal troubles loomed ahead, it marked not just a challenge but an opportunity, a chance for dialogue aimed at bridging gaps between tradition and innovation within our beloved community. Through resilience forged within these trials, I knew we would emerge stronger than ever before. As the dust began to settle after the intense legal battles with the HOA, I realized that my journey had evolved into an unexpected opportunity for dialogue and change. While tensions had run high during the hearings, the experience had also opened doors for conversations that had previously been stifled by fear or misunderstanding. The time had come to seek common ground between those who supported my MOAT and the HOA members who remained skeptical of its existence. Recognizing the importance of fostering open communication, I decided to host a community meeting at my house. The goal was simple: to bring together residents, HOA board members, and anyone interested in discussing how we could work together moving forward. I wanted to create a space where we could address concerns openly and collaboratively explore solutions that respected both individual freedoms and community standards. In preparation for the meeting, I reached out to both supporters and critics of the MOAT project, inviting them to share their thoughts and concerns. I emphasized that this gathering wasn't about taking sides or assigning blame. Rather, it was an opportunity for us all to listen to each other and find a path forward that benefited everyone in our neighborhood. On the night of the meeting, I set up my backyard as a welcoming space filled with chairs arranged in a circle around the moat. Twinkling lights hung from tree branches above, creating an inviting atmosphere amidst the sounds of crickets chirping in the background. As guests arrived, neighbors excitedly chatting with one another, I felt a sense of hopefulness wash over me. When everyone settled in, I opened the floor by sharing my journey, how my desire for a pool turned into building a moat full of alligators, ultimately leading to unexpected community engagement. I spoke candidly about my love for these creatures and how they had brought our neighborhood closer together, while also acknowledging the valid concerns raised by some residents regarding safety and property values. After my introduction, I invited others to share their thoughts freely. To my relief, many neighbors spoke up in support of finding common ground. Some expressed how much they appreciated having alligators nearby. They loved seeing their kids engaged with nature rather than glued to screens. Others voiced their concerns about safety, but were open to discussing ways we could implement measures that would ensure everyone felt secure. Then Mrs. Thompson took her turn, the woman who had once been my fiercest critic. To my surprise, she began by acknowledging how much she'd learned since Gator Day started. "I'll admit," she said, I was skeptical at first, but seeing how happy those alligators make families has changed my perspective. Her honesty resonated throughout the group. People nodded in agreement as she continued. I think we need to work together on establishing guidelines for exotic pet ownership that can keep our community safe while still allowing for creativity. Her willingness to find common ground encouraged others to chime in with similar sentiments. Conversations began flowing more easily as residents brainstormed ideas about creating educational programs focused on responsible ownership of exotic pets. Not just alligators, but any unusual animals people might want to keep. The discussion soon turned towards safety measures as well. We talked about establishing clear boundaries around the moat, fencing options that would keep children safe while still allowing adults easy access for viewing. Neighbors suggested regular community updates regarding the health and well-being of our new reptilian residents, ensuring everyone felt informed without any misunderstandings. As ideas bounced back and forth, it became clear that we weren't just finding solutions. We were forging connections across divides that had previously separated us. Those who had once viewed each other with suspicion were now working together toward shared goals, a testament to how understanding can bridge gaps when approached openly. By the end of the evening, we established a committee dedicated to drafting guidelines for exotic pet ownership within our neighborhood, an initiative that would require input from both supporters of my moat and those who had reservations about its presence. It felt empowering knowing we were collaborating on something tangible. Not only would it address safety concerns, but also celebrate individuality. As guests began to leave, many expressed gratitude for being part of this transformative evening, excited about what lay ahead as we continued building relationships rooted in mutual respect rather than fear or division. Reflecting on how far we'd come since those early days filled with tension and uncertainty, it struck me that this journey wasn't merely about alligators or even defying HOA rules anymore. It was about strengthening bonds within our community through shared experiences. In every dialogue sparked around understanding each other's perspectives, there emerged newfound empathy towards one another's values. What started as conflict gave way to collaboration, a reminder that sometimes embracing differences leads toward unity rather than division. With every step forward taken together, we were not just reshaping policies, but also redefining what it meant to be neighbors willing to stand by each other through challenges while celebrating creativity flourishing amidst adversity. As I watched families gather once more around our moat filled with alligators, it became clear just how powerful finding common ground could be. As I reflect on this incredible journey, how an initial desire for a pool transformed into the construction of a moat full of alligators, I am struck by the profound changes it has brought to my life and to my community. What began as an act of defiance against an HOA decision evolved into a powerful story of creativity, connection, and resilience. I never could have anticipated the ripple effects that would follow my unconventional choice. In the beginning, I was filled with frustration when my pool request was denied. It felt like a personal affront, a restriction that stifled my dreams. But instead of succumbing to anger or disappointment, I chose to channel that energy into something bold and imaginative, a decision that ultimately sparked a transformation not just in my backyard, but in the very fabric of our neighborhood. The construction of the moat was not merely about creating an unusual feature. It became a collaborative endeavor that brought people together. Friends and neighbors rallied around me, sharing laughs and stories as we dug, shaped, and reinforced what would become home to our new reptilian residents. The bonds formed during those hot summer days of labor laid the groundwork for a newfound sense of community, one where creativity was encouraged and differences were embraced. As the alligators arrived and Gator Days kicked off, I witnessed a remarkable shift in how residents interacted with one another. Families who had previously remained distant began coming together, drawn by their shared curiosity and excitement about these creatures. Conversations flowed easily around the moat as children laughed and pointed at the alligators swimming gracefully through the water. It was heartwarming to see friendships blossom as parents forged connections during playdates and picnics by the water. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The legal challenges posed by the HOA tested our resolve and highlighted underlying tensions within the community. It was difficult to confront those who view my project as irresponsible or threatening. Their voices felt loud amidst our growing enthusiasm. Yet rather than allowing fear to dictate our actions, we chose to engage openly in dialogue. By hosting meetings and inviting differing perspectives to share their thoughts, we found common ground, a testament to what can happen when individuals come together in pursuit of understanding. Through those discussions, we crafted guidelines for exotic pet ownership that respected both individual freedoms and community safety. We formed committees dedicated to fostering responsible practices while celebrating our unique interests. This collaborative effort not only addressed concerns but also created a framework for future initiatives aimed at enhancing our neighborhood's character. Looking back, I realize how transformative this journey has been, not just for me personally, but for everyone involved. What started as an unconventional rebellion against conformity blossomed into a movement fueled by creativity and collaboration. The moat became more than just a home for alligators. It evolved into a symbol of resilience against adversity, a reminder that sometimes embracing what makes us different can unite us rather than divide us. As I sit by the moat today, watching families gather once again, children laughing and adults engaging in animated discussions, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude for everything that has unfolded. The alligators have surpassed their role as mere pets. They serve as catalysts for connection within our community. They remind us daily of the importance of joy, creativity, and open-mindedness, values worth championing in any neighborhood. I've learned that standing up for what you believe in can lead not only to personal fulfillment but also to positive change on larger scales. Challenging norms doesn't come without risks, but when approached with intention and collaboration, it has the potential to foster growth beyond what we imagine possible. As I reflect on this journey from frustration to triumph, what once seemed like an obstacle became an opportunity, a chance not only to fulfill my dream but also to strengthen ties among neighbors who now share laughter around our moat. This experience has forever changed how I view challenges. They can be turned into stepping stones toward greater connection if met with courage. So here's to embracing creativity amidst adversity, to daring greatly even when faced with uncertainty, and above all, to fostering communities where individuality thrives alongside unity. The journey isn't over. It's merely the beginning of many adventures yet to come. As long as we remain open-hearted towards one another, there's no telling what extraordinary experiences await us next. The end.